Hey everybody, and welcome to the Beloved podcast. I'm your host, Kelly, and I'm so excited to share this first episode with you. In this episode, I'm going to share with you why I named this podcast Beloved, who it's for, and I'll share a little bit of my story because really my story is connected to why I care and why I even talk about this. So firstly, I just want to say welcome. And I'm so grateful to have you in my space. I'm so happy to hold a podcast again. I had a solo podcast, then I took it down, then Matt and I had a podcast, and then we stopped doing that. And now I'm coming back to the solo podcasting. And I really want this to be like vulnerable, intimate, connected, like feel like just a women's group, a women's circle where we sit down and I share some stories and some teachings. And I also want to hear from you guys too. So I want this podcast to be co-created. I want to hear what topics you want to hear about. I'm going to be answering Q&As and I have some guests on as well. So first, I want to start out with talking about why I named this podcast Beloved. So I named this podcast Beloved because I love that word. Okay, it's two psycho cats running around my room. I should have kicked them out. If you're watching on YouTube, you see the cat just jumping behind me. They're brother and sister, so they fight. We have 5 cats. It is intense, but we love them so much. Okay, so Beloved. I love this word, especially when I became Christian. I started reading the Bible and I just saw how God calls us beloved children. I just absolutely loved that. And it really spoke to this piece in my story of how when I realized I was God's beloved daughter and I put that puzzle piece into the center of my life, everything else made sense and my relationship got even better. It was already great, but it got even better and life became even more peaceful, even in the struggles, even in the challenges, because when at the center my identity is a beloved daughter of the King of the universe, everything else just makes sense. And so the centerpiece of this podcast is that you are a beloved daughter of the King. And claiming that identity and owning that identity and discussing, I'll chat about that as well. And I'm excited to talk about faith and God and Jesus and all the things. And so that's the centerpiece. And then as a domino from there, right, that first one, then we go into the second identity of being a beloved wife. And I don't mean that this is just talking about being a wife or just talking about marriage. It's also talking to the single woman who wants to be a wife. Probably especially talking to that woman because Matt and I, we talk to those type of women so much. And we love helping women in that situation because I know it can feel so far away from beloved wife, but we love to help women get there. So whether you're a single woman, you want to be a beloved wife, or you are in a relationship, want to be a beloved wife, or if you are already married and you want to be a beloved wife, we're going to talk about it inside this podcast and how you can do all those things, connect to your femininity, communicate with grace, love your man, love God, honor God in your relationship, and all those things that I find so important. And also speaking about dating with discernment. And I actually have a podcast episode coming out in this first chunk because I'm releasing all 4 at once, talking about dating. So if you're a single woman, definitely go check out that episode. Now I'm going to share a little bit about why I care about this topic. Why do I spend so much time talking about dating and relationships and all the things I just talked to you about? The reason is that since I was little, like maybe so many little girls, I dreamed of my future relationship. I dreamed of the man that I would be with. I had a pillow that I would sleep with at night with Orlando Bloom's face or Usher's face. I would like switch the little pictures at the front of it was like a frame. And I would just literally fall asleep dreaming of the man that I would marry, and I'd listen to my Taylor Swift songs about kissing boys in the rain, and I thought, oh my gosh, when I just have love, my whole life is going to make sense. However, that wasn't quite the way that it went once I started dating and getting out there and trying to find love. It was really challenging. I didn't have a healthy model at home. My parents got divorced. I never learned how to communicate. I mean, I love my parents so much, but it just wasn't something that was taught at home. And anyways, I just floundered. I got into situationships, very long situationships, or I gave my body away to try to get love, and ultimately just had so much heartbreak and challenge in those early years of trying to find love and failing that I convinced myself that I thought that maybe I'm supposed to be dating women, and that's the problem. That's always been the problem, and I'll just fix this and then everything will be okay. However, once I started dating women, my patterns became even more loud. I ended up in a relationship with this woman. We got engaged, and this was the most toxic relationship to date. Like, I had been in relationships with men in the past where there was fighting and craziness and stuff like that, but this was another level of like manipulation and control, and I just felt very like trapped and passive. I wouldn't say anything, and I didn't want the relationship to end, and I was partly in it just for the way it looked from the outside, and on the inside it felt terrible, like all these things swirling around. And luckily, thanks be to God, honestly, that relationship fell apart. And from that place of really not even just that relationship falling apart, but in many ways lots of pieces of my life falling apart at that same time, I leaned into what I knew I had to do, which was heal. I had so many wounds on my heart. I mean, from my parents' divorce, from failed relationships, from casual sex, I got an abortion. I mean, my heart was just so wounded and bleeding at that point. And so I just finally leaned into my healing, although I had kind of touched on some healing or personal growth before that. But now I was like, okay, it's time to really focus on healing my heart and my relationship with relationships. And so I got sober because I had been drinking and doing drugs and things like that on and off throughout my 20s and teens. I got sober. I stopped dating and decided to have a period of celibacy. And that wasn't just about not dating or not having sex, but I actually didn't flirt with men or anyone. I didn't flirt. I didn't even make eye contact. If I saw someone who I thought was attractive, I was like, avert your eyes. Like, I was hardcore. And in that time, when I took away all the attention I've been focusing outwards and all that unhealthy attention, I faced it inwards. And at that point, I started creating a relationship with God. It was the very beginnings of that. I started doing some 12-step recovery programs to help me with my sobriety and celibacy. And I really dove into that healing and feeling those deep parts of my heart that were so lonely and hurt, and that thought I wasn't good enough and thought that I was bad and thought no one could ever love certain parts of me. I just started loving those parts of me. And I started letting God love those parts of me. And I remember the first moment that I realized, wow, I love myself, finally. I never have. And now I feel that love for myself. It was a hard road to get there, really. And in that same time, I started building my business and like doing things for myself, like building up my self-worth, and from a place of self-worth, also like creating things in my life, which I had never done before. Because I was always like, once I have that relationship, since I was little, once I have that relationship, then I'll be loved and I'll be happy and I'll be peaceful. But instead I started creating that from the center, from me, and then realizing that it wasn't out there. It was right here. It was right here in with God as well. And this was in the beginning of 2020. The world was shutting down, and so was I. And I was living in Bali at the time, and I decided to stay through COVID with some friends. And it was at the end of 2020 that I started dating again. And this time I started dating with accountability. I had a therapist, a coach, a mentor, a sponsor, lots of support because I needed it. I had a dating plan. I had someone holding me through my dating plan and helping me to move slowly and not fall into those old patterns of the past. Also, at that same time, I started playing the opposite game, which is playing the opposite game, my cats are just being psychos again, but playing the opposite game basically means is like, in the past, I would never speak my needs. I would never speak what I wanted. I played the opposite game. I spoke every need. I spoke every desire. I spoke every feeling, really swung the pendulum to the other end. And because of that, I just started attracting different men. I started attracting men who were like masculine, who wanted to take me out, and it wasn't just that I was like attracting them magically. It was like I was saying no to the men who wanted casual or who wanted last minute dates, and saying yes to the men who wanted to plan something for me, and I was receiving it with grace. And at that same time, I had worked really hard on healing my resentment towards men, because even in dating women, I realized, oh my gosh, it was always just that I was looking for love, and that I was so resentful and fearful towards men because of my heartbreak, because of my abortion. And so I just started healing all those pieces, healing my relationship with my dad and with my exes just internally. And that opened my heart to love with a man, which is what I actually always wanted. And I started learning how to communicate with men and how they're different than women, and how I never understood that, how to set boundaries with men. And I felt so empowered. I felt so feminine, also learning how to embrace my femininity. Because when I thought I was a lesbian, literally, back then, I shaved my head. Like, I was very masculine. And I started to embrace my femininity and dress more modestly. It was like the baby beginnings of that journey for me. And anyways, once I started dating, after meeting a few great men, going on some great dates for a little while, it was a few months that I was dating with discernment, dating slowly, with support, and then I met Matt. And I mean, the first time I saw Matt, I was like, wow, I need to try not to get ahead of myself, because he seems like everything that I've been looking for. I mean, it was crazy. Just in the way even he looked, like I just found him so attractive, and I loved his tattoos, but then beyond that, because of course that's what I saw first, but I loved he was funny. I love that he was passionate about what he did. I love that he was a long-term vegan like I was too, so we shared that value, and we taught about similar things. And I was just like, whoa, I had to use a lot of my tools to just like not decide he was my husband right off the bat. And I really worked those tools and got a lot of support, and that was crucial. Like, if I hadn't been doing those things, one, I don't even think I would have met Matt, but then two, if I would have met him, I'm sure that I would have messed it up some way, honestly. I would have sabotaged it in some way. And so anyways, there's so many good stories about the beginnings of our relationship that I love to tell. I've told some on Instagram, and I'm definitely going to tell some here. But healing doesn't just happen by ourselves or even with a therapist, mentor, coach, whatever. It happens also in relationship, because I wasn't perfectly healed. I didn't have everything figured out before I met Matt. There were still places in my heart that were wounded. And in connection with him, they started to heal or did heal. Those parts of my heart that were fearful of being honest with someone that I really liked, because I thought they would leave, because that had happened when I was young. I would be honest with him from a place of self-worth and trusting God, be honest with him. And he met me with so much love and gentleness, and like my heart healed in me doing that, but in his response as well. And again and again and again, that kept happening. And it just felt so good. It was the first healthy relationship that I had ever been in. And it wasn't by luck, and it wasn't just because he was great, but it was also because I had spent that time of building up my self-worth and building relationship skills and learning how to love men and all those different things. And so fast forward, Matt and I get engaged, and we get married. And around this same time, I began, this is kind of like the whole time when Matt and I were both going on a deeper journey with God. And this was really when we were becoming Christian. We didn't know it at the beginning of it, and I told my whole testimony story, and I really actually start at this point in life because it was such a significant moment in life. And then we became Christian ultimately, and it just furthered the understanding I had of growth and healing, but it also pruned some things away. There were some ways that I was relating to growth and healing from my pre-Christian perspective that I realized weren't true, that didn't really work, like specifically around my sexuality and my spirituality as well. And, I was more like New Age spirituality, or I was, New Age spirituality, just to put a label on it so you could understand that. It's kind of like the ideas I had pre-Christian, and then becoming Christian, I was like, oh wow, I'm seeing where our teaching can be even better. I'm seeing where the truth and the lies are, and I'm further integrating the great things that I already had, like had learned and had embodied, like femininity, like a way deeper understanding of that, and so much more deeper integration there, and loving men, deeper integration there. And that was so beautiful. Dating with discernment, dating slowly, pieces of healing, like healing with, because healing is great, personal growth is great, parts of it, However, I really believe now that I have God, like that can only get us so far. And it can get us somewhere. Like I really did heal, and I did have God, a relationship with God in my own way. And I think that was actually crucial for that big healing journey I did. But then there were even still little like parts of my heart that needed some help, like around my abortion and other things as well. And when I brought in Jesus, it just was like a soothing balm for my heart. And those deep places that I couldn't reach myself, Jesus came right in and patched up those parts. And it's improved our already great marriage. It's improved, just everything. And God isn't just like a personal growth piece. God is like the Lord and Savior of my life, and has just reoriented my identity and everything following it. In the best way. And I'm so grateful for that deepening, for that pruning, and for the clarity that's come with this final piece of coming to Jesus. And then just to share the last part of my story, at the beginning of 2025, or really very end of 2024, we found out we were pregnant, which is something we've been praying for and wanting for a long time. And then 2025, I was pregnant and had our baby in September. And we have our precious little bundle of joy, which we are just so overjoyed to be parents. And it's so fun to be in this new chapter of our relationship and marriage and lives. And I'm excited to share more about that with you guys as well. So on this podcast, I'll be sharing more details of different parts of my story and teachings that go along with different parts of my story. And like I said, I'll answer your Q&As. I'll have on guests sometimes, and I'll speak about loving men, femininity, dating, Jesus, all the things that have made the biggest difference on my journey, all the things that I love, and all the things that hopefully you guys want to hear about as well. So if you are excited to be along for the journey, please subscribe wherever you're listening, leave a comment or leave a review if you feel so inspired. And I cannot wait to see you in the next episode. Thanks for being here.